Hi everyone. So let's see what's going on with my audio. Quick video because we're being set up, and I feel like I've seen through it. And I think what I've learned over the last couple of years with the whole COVID scare, I watched how I was psychologically manipulated and psyoped into being a useful idiot for a few months. And my spidey senses have been tingling the whole time since this bullshit kicked off in Ukraine. And I've been wondering, what's the game? What's the game? And I feel like I finally figured it out today. So it's a whole bunch of things, obviously. But first thing you can always orient yourself by is, what am I not allowed to think? And what I'm not allowed to think or discuss at the moment is Russia being actually fairly reasonable? And the fact that I don't even need the answer to that question, because yes, it's actually a reasonable question. That's not to say they are being reasonable, because people are obviously being killed by the results of their actions. But the context in which they're being taken is actually quite interesting. And there's a whole bunch of reasons you could come to the conclusion that, well, what else did you expect? If you step on a big supergiant's toes, they are not going to not retaliate, because they have to maintain a certain posture on the dynamic within the world stage, and you can't just continue expanding eastwards and expecting things not to kick off with the superpower to the east. Eventually, they're going to have to say, "Well, this is not okay." And from what I've seen, their response has been, we want to take over Ukraine. We want to do it with as little damage as possible, because we actually want all this infrastructure. And the Ukrainian government has responded by just saying, well, we benefit from as much disaster as possible. We're going to keep yelling fire in the crowded theater. We're going to give AK-47s to every single 5-year-old civilian that we possibly can, because the more chaos there is, the more money and the more support we get from the West. But look, I'm no expert in all this, but I'm at least asking questions. I'm finding the questions I'm not allowed to ask, and I'm saying, yeah, they are. And it's the same as asking the question back in the day, is COVID really that deadly? Reality is it isn't, but that was illegal, right? You were never allowed to think that or discuss that in polite society. So I'm saying, this is the fucking psyop. They want us afraid of Russia. And I know that because they came out today with, there is no need to fear nuclear war. Now, when you say that, you do about 3 very useful things. First off, you make everyone think they're a genius and they're ahead of the game by being afraid of nuclear war. And you make them think they should be doubly afraid because the government is telling you not to be afraid, and I'm very clever and I'm outsmarting everyone else, and I'm going to get ahead of the herd by being afraid of nuclear war. And that's exactly what they did at the beginning of COVID. They said, don't worry, it's not a pandemic. It's not a deadly pandemic. You're not going to die of the pandemic. And that made everyone very, very scared of it. And it also made people think the governments weren't. This was one of the main reasons I fell for it, because the World Health Organization said it's not a pandemic. And they kept pushing and saying all these fear-inducing things. Because guess what? At the end of the fucking day, when people are afraid, they don't pay any attention to their civil liberties. And when your civil liberties get taken away because it's demanded so by an afraid population, you're never getting them back. We are not getting any of the civil liberties we lost due to COVID back. And now no one's even fucking paying attention because everyone's so excited about Russia and Ukraine. So you'd think people would be a little bit awake to what's going on here, with the fact that this is Russia we're talking about. Who are Russia? When Clinton lost an election, she didn't do any self-reflection, neither did the entire establishment of mainstream American politicians, the media, nothing. All they did was say it's all Russia's fault, they hacked our election. They never offered any fucking proof, nothing. And everyone just fell for it. Everyone did what they were told, yeah, it's all Russia. People have been asking for evidence of any of that stuff. Trump shouldn't be in office. He was put there by Russia. A foreign superpower interfered with our election. Bullshit. Never offered any proof. They never ever managed to touch Trump with anything there, because it was all nonsense. The motivation was there to take him out, and they couldn't find anything to back up those claims, and people just forgot about it. But the fact that Russia has been used as the boogeyman for 7 years now, without any sort of shame or without any sort of embarrassment on the part of the people that keep using it like that, should make some people go, wait, what's the story right now? We're all supposed to be outraged about Russia? Haven't they been using that for everything? No, I'm not. I'm going to wait until there's a little bit more information here. And what's the goal right now? As I said, you're supposed to be fucking I stand with Ukraine hashtag. You're supposed to have a fucking Ukrainian flag tattooed on your face by this point. Do you not see the psyop, guys? Do you not see that they are pushing you towards supporting an agenda that is very useful to them? Because what are they going to do? Even if it's based, of course it's based in righteousness. Of course you don't want there to be a war and an aggressive superpower invading and destroying the lives of Ukrainians. Of course you don't want that. Just like you don't want grandmas to die of COVID. But if you're shit scared of COVID, what the fuck happens? If you're shit scared of COVID, you don't give a shit if they tell you you're not allowed on airplanes anymore and you're not allowed to do anything without some digital ID. You're not going to care about any of that stuff anymore because you're too busy being worried about a disease, which actually it's going to turn out there isn't really much to worry about. So the fact that Russia is slowly but carefully taking over a largely Russian country anyway, that they've kind of been backed into a corner and put in a position where they don't really have another choice, doesn't mean he's about to drop a fucking nuke in the middle of Kentucky or something, does it? So there's nothing to actually be scared of. In a few years, there's not going to be any nukes. There's not going to be a bunch of Russian people speaking Russian in the middle of New York. That's not going to happen, okay? But what is potentially going to happen is you're going to be a whole lot less free, just like as a result of all the COVID stuff. Did you die from COVID? No. Does anyone you know die from COVID? And I don't mean your next door neighbours, aunties, barbers, guy that grooms their dog's mother. No, I don't mean that. I mean, have you actually been fucking affected by COVID in any real capacity, aside from what the governments did? They destroyed your business, they ruined your kid's childhood, all that stuff. But did COVID itself actually direct you? Fucking no, it didn't. It didn't affect anyone because it's not a particularly dangerous disease. I can say this firsthand now because I just had it. I'm still getting over it. And like, I've had colds and flus that were worse than that. This whole thing is a fucking joke. But the point is, the fact that it exists, the fact that it's being used as it has been used, and the fact that we are unable to get back any of the things we lost due to it, is evidence in your assessment of things and your rush to judgment and how your own good nature might be used against you. Because I see every useful idiot out there right now standing with Ukraine and saying, you know, this is a black and white situation. They've been, Russia is being aggressive. They have no right to do this. It's very simple. They shouldn't be doing it. Ukrainians are getting killed. It's terrible. I stand with Ukraine. Like, okay, but could you maybe add a bit of a third dimension to your thinking and realize the fact that we live in a world with other countries in it and corrupt people that use big world events and use the inertia of people's own emotions collectively against them, so that those people can then lose the freedoms that you don't want them to have in the first place? Because we can all become united, right? Suddenly we're all united together in defense of Ukraine, and that is a very dangerous position to be in. We don't want to be united, not with the same fucking people that have spent the last 2 years destroying our lives for no scientific reason whatsoever. Are we going to just sit here and pay attention to that and act like it's not happening? I don't fucking think so. I'm not falling for it. No way. I'm not falling. This is an obvious fucking psyop. I can see it a mile off. And it didn't take long. I've held out for 3 days and I've said, I don't know, while everyone's jumping on the bandwagon, changing profile pictures and adding hashtags everywhere. I've been saying, I don't know. I know what I'm supposed to be saying. I'm going to hold off from saying it. And lo and behold, I finally find the thing I'm looking for, which is, I think I've figured out what the narrative is. And I think I've already managed to find some evidence that it's not completely reasonable. And that's enough for me to say, how useful is it for everyone to suddenly believe this new narrative, which is, we need to stand with Ukraine. We need to support them. We need to sanction Russia. We need to clamp down. Like, I mean, we already knew it was all bullshit. I mean, we knew every claim about Russia had been something you'd have to take with a pinch of salt for a long time anyway. But here we are now. granted, a lot of these people that are falling for this are people that never actually felt any outrage about all the claims that were made about the 2016 election and Trump's election and all of the things that we were told to believe about that were supposed to be an excuse for why Trump won, as opposed to Americans actually voted for him and Americans really didn't want to elect Hillary Clinton. That was never ever something that could, be acceptable to any of the mainstream media outlets in America. It was always, oh no, there's been a hack, right? And all these people shamelessly, of course, then said that the 2020 election of Joe Biden could never have been hacked. That was a completely legitimate election. And, rather than flip-flop from side to side, I'm going to say there's shenanigans in every election. But the idea that 2016 was a Russian hack and that 2020 wasn't, the mental gymnastics to justify that. If Trump was good in 2016 for Russia, why didn't they just hack it again and win him in 2020? No, that's not an acceptable question. None of these things make any sense. None of these narratives do. And the current narrative is just as much of a bunch of bullshit as every other narrative. And I saw someone tweet, just let people have nice things, we don't be critical of people, let people think what they want to think, as a defense for people that are posting pro-war propaganda right now. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to not call you out on your shit if your shit is posting a bunch of fake hero stories about this 6-year-old in Ukraine managed to restart a tank and rebuild an AK-47 and then shoot 13 Russian aggressors and save this woman from being... Bollocks. None of this fucking shit is happening at all. Ukrainians don't want to get drafted. They don't want to get conscripted, and they're trying to get the fuck out of Ukraine before the Ukrainian government conscripts them and forces a bunch more violence and carnage and chaos because it's useful to the Ukrainian government. Bullshit. Putin wants to minimize the violence. The Ukrainian government wants to maximize it because it's expedient for them. And Ukrainians don't want to get caught in the middle of politics. Ukrainians are just human beings that want to be safe with their families. So are Russians. So is every fucking one else. That's all we want. This bullshit from politicians and world organizations of unelected Nazis and they're the fucking evil people here. And now suddenly everyone is on their side. That's what's killing me here. Everyone is on the fucking side of these psychopaths now. And it's killing me to watch it. It's taken me a few days to figure this out, but here we are, and I'm finally looking at it, and I'm just saying, I can see through the bullshit. I want to feel like I know what's going on. I want to listen to people more intelligent than me, but I know what I'm being told to think, as opposed to I'm not being given information. I'm being given narratives, and it's not the same fucking thing. And I've learnt to spot the difference, and people need to learn to spot the difference. And I'm grateful that COVID woke me up and gave me this big giant red pill that I can never ever fall for these kinds of things again. Because you've always got to wonder about how what you believe is useful to someone in a position of power. You've always got to question that, because it's not, you're not violating the rules of common sense, and you're not being illogical when you can analyze the psychology of what's being presented to you. Because this is important to realize, because I don't want to be an idiot, and I'm not an idiot, and I don't want to be stupid, and I don't want to go against something that looks like it's obviously true. If the sky is blue and someone comes along and says it's a psyop, it's really green, you've just been told it's blue for so long that that's what you actually see now. Okay, I'm not talking about stuff like that. I think that's ridiculous. But when it comes to emergent events and violence, in the context of what's going on at the moment, of course you're supposed to question it, and you're supposed to... I'm sick of people being rolling their eyes at people going, what's the psyop? There's a psyop here. What aren't we being told about Russia, Ukraine? Everyone likes to think they're so damn clever and go, guys, not everything's a conspiracy theory. They really are, Putin is an asshole. He really is just invading, and you can just be worried about the loss of life, the innocent... I don't buy that at all. in the context of what's going on and the way information is being presented to us, and the orthodoxy that has already emerged in a few days about what I'm supposed to believe, that has every hallmark of something that a rational and experienced human being should look at and go, this is a pack of lies, and I'm not falling for it. And that being the case, what's the utility of these lies? Who does it help if I believe a bunch of stuff? Who does it help if I get a Ukrainian flag tattooed on my face? Who does it help? And I'll tell you who it helps. It helps the warmongering establishment of the West. So I don't really want to help them. I spent my whole life fighting against them, trying to defund them. Who else does it help? Oh, no one. It helps people that want to erode my civil liberties, because if they, like, the fact that they would come out and say people should not be afraid of nuclear war, I mean, that's just that is a textbook manipulative psychologically. Like, I always use this analogy. If a guy comes up to you, you're a woman, you're in the middle of a dark alley, it's 3 a.m, there's no one around, a guy comes up to you in a dark alley and says, I'm not gonna rape you. Does it make you feel very comfortable and like, oh, thank God, you know? Or what about if you're in a context where you're in a nice place and there's plenty of people around, it's well lit, and a guy, you know, brings you to the side of a room and says, I'm not going to rape you, for no reason. You'd be like, well, I wasn't thinking about rape, but I am now, and I feel really uncomfortable. It doesn't matter that you said you wouldn't, because no one was even talking about that, and now it's in my head, and I suddenly feel like I need to get the fuck out of here and get somewhere safe. So when you say to people, there's not going to be a nuclear war, that makes people afraid of nuclear war. It doesn't have the effect of... You immediately feel like, I'd be stupid not to worry about nuclear war. This is the ultimate phrase of it. This is what my girlfriend has taught me about psychology. She has said you can't control what people think, but you can control what people think about. And now everyone is thinking about nuclear war, and they are going to get angry with politicians for not stepping it up and defending and maybe even making a preemptive strike against Russia because nuclear war. So this is it's just so textbook, isn't it? They always say that the worst possible thing is not going to happen, because because before that they hadn't said anything, and the worst possible thing didn't even enter the public consciousness yet. Do you remember vaccine passports that we don't have, that are just a conspiracy theory? Do you remember how they were first talked about? It was, we are not going to introduce a system of vaccine passports. That's how they were first talked about. Now we have vaccine passports. What did saying we are not going to introduce vaccine passports do to everyone? It made them desensitized to the idea, because it was first presented, it has been presented, and the more times you hear an idea, the more the outrage slips away. It was presented in a negative sense, which makes everyone go, I don't need to resist this quite as much, because they said they wouldn't do it, so I can relax. And it introduced it into the public consciousness in the most sly, roundabout, manipulative way they could do it. Because if you just come out and say, we are going to introduce vaccine passports, everyone goes, what? I never voted for that. I never even heard of that. What is this? I don't want this. If you just introduce them without announcing them at all, that might cause outrage as well. The way in which you can introduce unfavorable political things into a society is by saying you're not going to do them, because then everyone gets desensitized to them. And then eventually you can push them onto people anyway, and people will be like, oh, didn't we already have them? Like, we didn't have them, then we did, then we didn't, and we did, and, you know, and you fuck everyone up in their head. Because for years I've been lamenting the loss of civil liberties that come as a result of there being no privacy in any of the digital realms that we occupy. And I went from being a conspiracy theorist to being someone that complains about something we already know. And there was never an outrage bit, because then, you know, Patriot Act happened, everything became, the internet became a panopticon, Snowden came out with the revelations, and everyone went, yeah, we knew, so what? Who cares about this whistleblower? Oh, he's a Russian agent, by the way. As it like everything I'm going to talk about that's controversial is always going to come back to something that, oh, turns out they blamed it on Russia, of course, because that's what they always do. But Snowden, of course, he's a Russian asset. It's not because he was flying from Hong Kong to, where was it, Brazil, and he had a connecting flight in Russia, and they cancelled his passport while he was stuck there because they knew that would be incriminating for him. No, he was a Russian asset the whole time. I remember the head of MI5 sitting on BBC Newsnight saying Russia can crack all of the ways in which Snowden has encrypted all the information he has. Yeah, right. I'm sure Russia can totally crack, public key cryptography. I'm sure they've totally hacked all the Bitcoin there are as well, because they totally know how to crack NSA encryption algorithms, and they're keeping it secret, except for in Snowden's case where they've it's the thing about the Snowden thing was it simultaneously was everyone saying, yeah, we don't care about that, we already knew that, and you're a conspiracy theorist if you believe it. But not only that, to add insult to injury, they would also say that we not only that we knew it all, but that he put everyone in danger, and that Russia, if they find out that intel, is going to be so dangerous for us all. But by the way, we already knew everything that was in there in the first place, and by the way, none of it's true. So, like, again, the mental gymnastics for all three of those positions to be held, and you see it everywhere. Anytime Snowden posts anything, anytime Assange has anything publicly occur about him, anytime he enters public discourse, there will be a bunch of lies. Just like how with Russell Brichtitz, didn't he have a few people murdered? No, he didn't. He ran a website. On that website, people bought and sold drugs to one another. That's it. He didn't kill anyone. Assange didn't release any information that led to the deaths of any American civilians. And by the way, he's not an American, and he didn't do any of this in America. So who cares about American law? Why is that even a thing? I'm going way off topic here. Let's get back to Russia, right? For years, Russia has been a good source of information because it's not, as my more red-pilled friends would tell me I'm falling for another psyop here, but the reason you can watch Max Kaiser on Russia Today, and the reason you could watch Julian Assange's TV show on Russia Today, is because nowhere else is going to give you that information. It doesn't make the information false, but it does mean that it's helpful to Russia if American citizens can know some shit that American media won't tell American citizens about America. So, of course, Russia Today becomes a useful source of information. It doesn't mean it's all true, but it does mean that the motivation and the incentives behind what they show on their show are different enough that you might actually learn something about your own culture that you're not supposed to know. That's helpful. So yeah, I've watched a lot of shows on Russia Today. I wonder what will happen to Max Kaiser's show now. Anyway, so I think I've figured out the psyop. And I think we're being had, as usual. I don't think I'm going to be falling for this one. I think it's all very tempting to get super excited and to go, wow, World War III. Is it World War III? No, it can't be World War III. It can't be nuclear war. Oh my God, it can't be that. And I think that's the game, right? I think that's basically the main thing is for people, as pathetic as it is pandemics are fucking exciting. And war is fucking exciting, and you don't need to care about it. If you're a Ukrainian, you're having to lamb your family out. That sucks, and you wish it wasn't happening. But if you're a tweeter in New York or London, you get to be really excited about it, and you get to go, I stand with Ukraine, and this is outrageous, and I'm so outraged, and please follow me, and I have some useful information. And look at the story of this hero that took out a tank, and he was only 8 weeks old. Just all of this absolute bollocks that's manipulating. The hero stories you've got to watch. The hero stories are all bullshit. Research every single one of them. They will turn out to be absolute horse shit. I don't care who it is, whatever a Ukrainian hero stood up and managed to murder 8,100 billion Russian nuclear missile general dropping whatever, bollocks. Every time it's going to turn out to be bollocks, but it will have been very useful for you to believe it for a short time. Just like it was very useful to believe that there was a bunch of Chinese people fainting and dropping to their deaths in the middle of Beijing during the world's most deadly, brutal, definitely not, it was almost a psyop how they pretended it wasn't coming from a lab. We know now that it did come from a lab, but here's what we were told. It's very dangerous but organic, and the reality is it's inorganic but actually not very dangerous. The exact opposite of what most people believe, even though that's all public information now, and it's not in any way a conspiracy theory. It's a fact that COVID was leaked from a lab, and it's a fact that it is a fucking mild disease for 99% of people. Can confirm, have now had it, have been tested, and basically better. It's been about 3 days of feeling absolute shit, and 2 days of feeling like, oh, I'm alright, but I need a bit more sleep than normal. That's it. I haven't even felt the need to cough once in this whole video. So yeah, who are my beliefs helpful to? Sorry about the ramble, but I mean, this is Bitcoin Mechanic channel, that's what I do. Who is it helpful? If I go full NPC mode and go, I stand with Ukraine, Ukrainian flag, Ukrainian women are all so hot, lol, I hate Putin, he rigged my election. If I go full Peter McCormack on everything, who am I helping? I'm helping the war machine. I'm helping with the distraction of the complete fuck up of the last 2 years when it comes to COVID. And I'm going to be helping with the destruction of my own civil liberties, because that's obviously coming. Sounding the alarm on that right now, because how much experience do I need? You should know that that's coming at this point. If there's ever a world event of any nature, it will be used by the elites to remove your civil liberties. It will be used as an excuse. And what else? It will be used to free up lots and lots of money. Loads of money will be printed and extorted through populations in order to pay for the valiant righteous efforts of repurposing or rehousing poor Ukrainian citizens and helping provide them with an army and help us fight the evil Russians and all this stuff. Internet, there's so many Russian bots on everything. We need to clamp down on the internet. We've got this convenient digital ID coming out. You're going to need that in order to have an internet connection to your house or to have a social media account. All of these things are kind of there anyway, so all we need now is a little excuse, and this Russia thing is a good excuse. I use good advisedly. Russia already has this system with social media, right? You need to upload Australia has this system. So if you want to have a Facebook account or a Twitter account, I believe already there you need to upload a form of government ID to be able to do it. Why? To combat misinformation, because misinformation is killing people with COVID. Don't you care about COVID? Don't you care about Russia? All these Russian bots manipulating our elections and telling us that things are okay when poor Ukrainians are dying. And guess what? If you're busy with a fucking hashtag saying, I stand with Ukraine, you're going to allow a certain amount of that stuff because apparently we're all on the same side. If it's, hey, we both agree that COVID is the most deadly thing ever, but I think you're taking things a little bit too far, that's nowhere near as useful as, hold on, you're telling me this is a deadly pandemic. It isn't. It's most of the time not even as dangerous as a fucking cold, and you're trying to tell me I'm not allowed to log onto the internet anymore? No. That's different. Do you see the difference between those two perspectives? Very different. So this is why, even if it just makes you a little bit more docile and a little bit more easy to manipulate, you are going to be so much more useful to them in this naive state of, well, the main thing to get excited about at the moment is the poor Ukrainians, right? And I'm not paying any attention to my own government. Oh, they did that little thing, but they need that because of Ukraine. Or, okay, maybe I disagree a little bit. Maybe they shouldn't have printed that extra $1 trillion last week. But, Ukraine, like, I'm telling you, if you take a defiant, angry, aggressively insistent stance that things need to be rigorously verified as true and military intervention on the part of your own government needs to be done based on genuine concerns and backed by real information and not propaganda, then if you take that stance now, you are going to be fighting back against stuff that is going to happen and that should not ever be allowed to happen. War unites nations, but it doesn't unite them in the way that you think. And it doesn't unite you with the people you want to be united with. It's good, you should be anti-war. Of course you should be anti-war. But this is not... The circumstances we are in the moment is basically a squabble between like cousins in countries that you come on, man. Does anyone care about China? No, no one cares about China. Only care about Russia, right? What's China doing? China gets away with far more egregious shit every day. Are there people saying, I stand with the Uyghurs? Where's the I stand with the Uyghurs? Where's I stand with the citizens of Hong Kong? Where's I stand with Taiwan, which you're going to need pretty soon if things are shaping up the way that I think they are, though maybe I'm wrong about that. But no one's standing with them because it's not a politically fashionable cause. This makes me sick, man. People are just... the way it serves all these different interests, and the way it serves social media influencers to be going on about Ukraine, to be retweeting stories of heroism, it makes me sick. Because it's all just self-serving and alarmist and fanning the flames of what ultimately... this is the truth. I haven't figured out where this is going yet. But I do know that it is going to result in the removal of civil liberties. And... The fact that nuclear weapons exist means that we're supposed to, the promise of mutually assured destruction is supposed to mean that we're not going to see an exchange of nuclear weapons. An exchange of bombs going on between the West and Russia. We're supposed to be safe and shielded from that by the reality of mutually assured destruction, which means this whole thing, if that's led to be true, thinking out loud here, if that is what we can accept as being true, and demonstrably it does seem to be quite a reliable principle, all that means is there's a mild squabble between Ukraine and Russia, and it's being used by the West. They are taking that inch and going a mile and saying, we need this, that's all that's going to happen really, isn't it? It's going to be a big nothing burger. Nothing's really going to happen. Yeah, they'll be speaking more Russian than Ukrainian in Ukraine. But basically the loss of life is going to turn out to be quite minimal because in comparison to what everyone's perspective is, all the original projections and all these things, just like COVID, it's going to turn out to be, it turns out it was only 102 people died of COVID. It wasn't 800,000. It was only 100. But by then no one cares, right? It's going to end up being the same because are you seeing an under-exaggeration or are you seeing an over-exaggeration? Let's be real. We're seeing an absolute balls to the wall, foot on the floor, hype machine about what's going on in Ukraine. No one is sneezing in Ukraine without you hearing about it right now. That's deliberate. What that means is the real numbers are actually going to be a lot less. The deaths, the violence, everything is going to end up being a lot more mild than people presume. Half the videos you've seen, if you go and reverse Google image search them, you'll see, this is from 2014. This isn't even real. It's just going to end up being the same bullshit. I'm telling you this for a fact, guys, because if you want to corroborate and push a narrative like they're doing, you're going to exaggerate as far as you can to the side that's beneficial to you. And the side that is beneficial to the Western war machine and the propaganda machine and the destroy your civil liberties machine is Russia has burnt every square inch of Ukraine to the ground. That's what they're trying to tell you. That's what they want you to believe. So that means the truth will be something closer to the other end, which is not that much is really going on. And that's probably going to end up being the truth. And back to mutually assured destruction, they're not going to nuke each other, but what's going to happen to the collective consciousness in Europe and in America and in Canada and in Australia and all the allegedly free Western democracies, what's going to happen in those countries is a change in our way of life. A bunch of inconveniences we don't want to put up with, but a bunch of inconveniences that if we refuse to tolerate, we are selfish people. We do not care about Ukrainians or grandmothers that we are killing with our germs. That's going to be the end of it. I can't see any other I can't see any other agenda here apart from a transition into an even more deeply authoritarian Western culture. I think that's ultimately the only way out here. And maybe I have a hammer and everything I see is a nail, and maybe when I'm trying to analyze world events, I am someone that is scared of authoritarianism, and that's it. So whenever I see any world event materialize, I think, how can this be used by the elites to justify further slide into authoritarianism? Maybe that's my own bias, but honestly, I just don't see any. I don't see any other outcome here. I think I'm going to turn out to be right as usual, and I think I don't want to be an idiot again, and I was a fucking idiot. Back at the beginning of COVID, I was incredibly helpful to these assholes like Jacinda in New Zealand, or Justin Trudeau in Canada, or Boris Johnson in the UK. I was helpful to these people because I was afraid of the thing they wanted me to be afraid of, that they were never afraid of. And we know they were never afraid of it. So I'm not going to be an idiot again. I'm going to learn the lesson I should have already known, but I'm not going to apologize for being wrong, because I've admitted that I was wrong and I've learnt my lesson. And in this case, I'm seeing, I've laid out everything that I think I can glean from what's going on. And I'd encourage you to be careful and to look at who your beliefs help, because your beliefs probably aren't helping you all that much if you are very, very outraged about the situation in Ukraine right now. You're not helping anyone, and you're working against yourself, because you're not in a position to do anything about Ukraine if you're very worried about it. But someone else is, and you're going to ask for their help, and that person is not someone you should be asking for help from, ever. No more worrying concept than someone saying, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Anyway, I will leave the video at that.